Good morning and welcome to our last Governance and Administration Finance Committee meeting for 2023. We'll start with noting that everybody's here. We don't have any extra councillors, so there's no leave of absence. We've got a couple of start items. Nobody's notified me of the conflict of interest declarations, so we might star that as well. So I've got 3, 4, 5.1, 6.2, 6.3, unstarring 6.4. It's for me as well, if that's okay. Unstarring 6.4, starring 6.5 and 6.6. 7.1, 7.2 and 7.3, which is the late item, are all starred. So would anybody like to move that? Move, Councillor Young. Seconded, Councillor Taylor. All in favour? Carried unanimously. So the next item of business is 6.1, but before we get to there, I just need to belatedly wish our director a happy birthday for earlier in the week. So she snuck through the keeper thinking that nobody would notice, but we did notice. So congratulations, 32 once again. My mum was 32 right up until her fifth child turned 32 and then she changed her age. So it's a good age to stay. So 6.1 is the Audit and Risk Committee composition. So I do have a question in regards to the proposed chair. So we're required to, as a council, pick a chair from any of the 4 external members. We have a new external member which we are seeking to appoint, which is Karen Prentice. So the chair has to come from any of the 4 members, and I think it does make a world of sense for that to be Ian. My question was, the recommendation is for 12 months, and I was interested to know why.
So through you, Mr Chair, so the proposal for 12 months, obviously we're recomposing the audit committee at the moment. We're having a complete look at structure in terms of, from an internal perspective, what's on the agenda, why. From our point of view, that was just to carry us over for the year to be able to work out some of those intricate details over that time, but nothing more really than that. Yeah,
so Ian himself wouldn't be opposed if we extended that to 2 years? Yeah, right. Councillor Hamill.
Mr. Chair, you just picked up on where my head was at too. Is that reading that and seeing the 12-month recommendation, I was more of a mindset that, given the tenure of the other members as well, of when their time comes up, that it made more sense to me for, if Ian was going to be appointed chair, that'd be for a 2-year period, so that we had the right synchronisation of when external members' times were coming up.
Which is kind of what we've consistently done over the last 10 years or so. So, Councillor Young, you're on the committee. Do you have any views in regards to that 2 years for Ian?
I think the 2 years would be fantastic. He's been on it, I think, just this last year, and from everything that we've experienced with him in the room, that he's very well credentialed to actually, if we're looking, as the director has indicated, looking at changes and the structure and how we present things, and that you would want that consistency going through, and I think Ian's going to be a very good person in that position.
Councillor Hamill? You're about to move change. I'll second it. I've got another change that I'd like to propose as well. So just in regards to Ian, I think that he's clearly capable, but he's actually very a stable hand, and I think that given the, I'm going to say, the turbulence that the organisation is in regards to change at the moment, I think that having consistency over a longer period than 12 months makes sense for that audit and risk role, because ultimately it's the ultimate independence from the administration. So I think it's important for us as elected representatives that he get the 2 years. My second proposed change involves a proposal around my appointment. So I've been a member of the Audit and Risk Committee for the last 11 years, which is probably a little bit too long in regards to standards. So what I would like to propose is that on the same date that we roll Karen and Ian on, which I think is the 31st, it's the 1st of January. So it would be from the 31st of December. So I'd like to propose that, Councillor Gates. Thank you. I'd like to propose that Councillor Mark Hamill be on that. So the way our charter is set up is basically the Act allows for up to 4 independent members, and the city has recently moved in the last couple of years from 3 to 4, and it allows up to 2 councillors, but more than 1. So, so we comply with the Act. It's a decision of council, and so if we change Ian's period, it wouldn't come back until the next council, which should be 20. I'm not counting, 400 and something days. So. Councillor Gates.
Well, I'd just like to speak to that, Chairman, in terms of your contribution. It has been incredible, and you have been diligent, and you've brought back to the council information as you've seen fit, and you've interrogated issues as they've come forward through audit. And I simply want to say, on behalf of the city, thank you and congratulations.
Thanks, Tony. Councillor Hamill.
Mr Chair, only to not only absolutely echo what Councillor Gates has said, but to say that I've got a big set of shoes to fill, both physically and metaphorically, on the Audit and Risk Committee, and I look forward to it, and that I will call upon you for advice whenever I can in regards to the Audit and Risk Committee. But thank you for the vote of confidence in suggesting I be put onto that committee.
Noted. Councillor Young.
And thanks, and to echo what both my colleagues have said, but also I've been on Audit and Risk. I think I was attending for a couple of years, but been on the committee for 3 years now, and it's invaluable, your contribution to every meeting that we go to, and I don't think either of us have missed a meeting since we've been on there together, but I just think your consistent approach to the committee, not only the committee, but your dedication to the city in every decision that's made and the information that you bring back to us. Not only have I learnt a lot through the committee, but through your guidance have learnt so much more about the organisation and your contribution and consistent contribution over the last 11 years. So thank you.
And Councillor Taylor, you attended on Monday. Thank you for that. There is a risk in attending more than 2 committees. If you would like to talk to Mark, he'll explain what that risk is. But I would encourage all councillors, both in the committee and outside of the committee, to attend the Risk and Audit Committee, because it is actually a useful experience. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, thank you. And that was my first one, and it was really insightful. And it is really important that other councillors do understand what's done at that committee meeting. It has taken me 2.5 years to get to my first one, but it's very important to understand the independence that board brings, and the questioning asked, and first meeting, but the questions that Councillor William Owen-Jones did put to the table was always very informative and challenging to all groups. So very important meeting for everyone, and I encourage everyone to come along and be part of witnessing what we do.
Rightio. All in favour? Carried unanimously. 6.4, thank you, Zara. 6.4, City Honours and Recognition Policy Update. Is that you, Steve? So I might just start by saying that we shuffled this policy around a little bit in the last 12 to 18 months, and as part of the acknowledging really fine citizens of the Gold Coast, I note that the Queensland Government recently recognised Claude Harvey as the Queensland Senior of the Year, and I'd like to think that that pathway that the city's created for recognition of our residents has helped us in gaining that broader recognition at a state and hopefully at a federal level. So, and Steve, I think that you'll agree that that was one of the fundamental reasons why we wanted to change the date and move things around. So well done on that. I had a question just in regards to the process of nomination for keys to the city. And so it talks of coming through council as a recommendation, but how do you actually, what do you see the best way of getting that process started so that it actually gets to be a recommendation, but you don't necessarily want to have somebody named if they're not going to ultimately be recognised? That makes sense.
Mr. Chairman, are you referencing the development of some type of sort of documented application process?
Or almost what's the internal trigger? So I'll give you an example. In the last month or so, a lot of councillors went to the 30th anniversary of the Junior Council program, which has had an enormous impact over a long period of time, and that was effectively started by two people who are still involved. And I look at that and think, well, that's a really good example of two Gold Coasters who should somehow be recognised for the work that they've been done. But how do you get that into the system so that it actually comes out as an opportunity for a recommendation? So the past 4 or 5 nominations have been, I'm going to say, a little bit ad hoc, you know, as opposed to maybe from the elected representatives.
Mr. Chairman, at the moment the policy just talks to the keys to the city being determined via a council resolution, so there's potentially an opportunity in there for us to go away and do some thinking around what the bones of a process might look like formally that sits behind that. We'd be happy to come back and advise or make a recommendation on that.
Councillor Gates?
I was just going to suggest that it could be a pretty loose sort of opportunity whereby councillors could email the mayor.
Yeah, the mayor or the CEO.
And there could be perhaps the CEO, the chair of governance and the mayor involved in determining whether or not to proceed with so just something very simple in that way so that it would be confidential, but there might be 3 people involved in making the decision about whether to proceed.
And the keys to the city are such an infrequent reward for a key citizen of the Gold Coast, and if you look at the roll outside, there's some outstanding Gold Coasters that have received it. So it's not something that clearly would happen every year either, but I just sense that there may be a benefit in having a different or a path or a trigger.
And we occasionally get submissions from people wanting to suggest someone, and I think historically they've just gone to the office of the mayor and they've either proceeded or not. So it might be good to have a simple process that ensures proper consideration of any suggestions.
So through the chair, we can do a simple one-pager, ready for the new year, which just clarifies a simple process, as you say, Councillor Gates, and makes it clear in terms of the evaluation process as well.
Well, possibly even as part of this policy, just a couple of lines that indicate how a nomination can be considered for the keys to the city. You might be able to just come up with a sentence that goes in under that for inclusion at full council.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions in regards to 6.4?
I only had one question, and that was just that it will be as it's always been, whereby a panel considers and provides a report to council with the nominees and some background, and then the decision will be made by council.
Through you, Mr Chairman, that's correct, Deputy Mayor. So the expert selection panel would be responsible for reviewing all nominations and then making a recommendation of finalists to council, and then it would be absolutely at council's discretion. They would get the opportunity to view all the nominations, view the recommended finalists, and make a determination as to who the winners are in each category.
There's just one other question I have. Occasionally, someone will raise a name from the floor that has not been included within a review by a panel. Is there any avenue for that to occur and for consideration to be given if it's a valid suggestion that has for some reason been overlooked?
Through you, Mr Chairman, the policy doesn't expressly provide an opportunity it doesn't expressly say that nominations can be taken late at a council meeting, but what it does say is that council will determine who the award recipients are in each category. Whether or not you felt it was necessary for us to go and add some wording around that which would clarify the desire to either A, allow that to occur, or B, not occur, we'd be happy to do that between now and full council.
I don't know how the rest of the councillors feel about it, but it has been something that we've been faced with previously, whereby someone will make a suggestion and express surprise that this person hasn't been nominated, and there may be a view that it might be a better selection than someone who is recommended. I just wasn't sure about the possibilities in that regard.
Yep. So maybe, Steve, you can give some thought as to how that might be amended. At the moment we have the ability to take people out of one category and move them across to another category if we feel that that's appropriate. So I don't think it's too far away from that, and it would be an infrequent event rather than a frequent event as well.
And another example, we were talking just yesterday, we heard the Honourable Rob Borbidge speak yesterday, and he is the most amazing statesman for our city. And I recall when we were setting up our legacy chairmanship for the Commonwealth Games, and we were given a list of names and he wasn't on it. And I, in fact, raised the suggestion from the floor that he would make a fine chairman, and he ended up chairing our legacy committee and many other things since that time. So it's just occasionally that there might be a thought that hasn't been considered that it would provide a good opportunity to pursue.
So would you like the recommendation, Councillor Gates, to be changed to reflect the ability for the officers to make minor adjustments?
I think if we just added that we would support minor administrative amendments as discussed at committee, we could then get the revised words for full council on Friday.
Because fundamentally the only principal change that we've made to the policy is to rule out any sitting councillor, state or federal member being nominated whilst they're in the chair. You know? Yeah. So, Councillor Hamill?
Not going to bite at that one.
I think he was going to be funny.
He was.
An attempt at humour.
But, for example, it doesn't prevent former elected representatives from being nominated by anybody. Rightio. Would anybody like to second Councillor Gates's? Thank you, Councillor Pauline Young. Councillor Gates, have you closed?
Well, I'll just again express appreciation to Steve and his team for the way that they put the amendments last year forward to us, because they've paid dividends already with Claude Harvey's nomination by the state, and that was always what we hoped for in adopting the new date for our awards and the new way of handling them. So it's terrific that in the very first year we see our awardee progress as now the state's nominee, and possibly he'll be the Senior Australian of the Year, which would be something else. So thank you, and thanks for the changes that you've brought forward today for us to make sure we're operating correctly.
Right. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Steve. And thanks, Elton, for showing your softer side there.
You mean?
Can't even say it to a straight face.
Councillors, 6.7 is the independent review of rate categories and objections.
So through you, Mr Chair, we're happy to, Karen and Hardy, I'm not sure if you've met Hardy before, Hardy on my left there, we're happy to go through and do a bit of an update of where we got to, or we're just happy to take questions.
So if I could have an update, please, and then we'll have questions from there.
Sure, thank you, Mr Chair. So update is that we've had the independent review conducted. The findings of that review indicate that our internal review was comprehensive, with immediate actions taken to address some gaps in the process and identify risks. The independent consultant has raised some additional improvement opportunities for us to undertake. We've included those in the attachment to your agenda papers and the timeframes for which we are looking at implementing those actions. To date, the number of objections that are coming in are actually slowing down. So we feel like that we've got over the hump of the major influx of objections to rating categorisations. We've processed a total of 245 since the issue of the rates notice in July.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions regarding the item or the agenda item? Councillor Pauline Young.
Through you, Chair, just to Karen, and in the 245 that you've processed since July, were there any additional concerns outside what the independent consultant had identified? Was there anything that wasn't covered within their extra recommendations?
Through the Chair, no, that independent review was quite thorough. It was good in the sense that it picked up additional opportunities for us to implement some monitoring processes using data to try and identify where there could be issues. We have an action taken down for that to start implementing that with the data available to us, but also looking at other systems and software available to us for rate modelling, but also to be able to do data cleansing.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Cheers.
So, Karen, in regards to the 245, was there a correlation between the completion of a data collection form or not from that cohort of ratepayers?
That's correct, Mr Chair. Generally, what we find is that the customer has not returned a data collection form. In addition to the data collection form, the customer is also given the opportunity to review their rate categorisation on the issue of the rate notice. So even in the event where they haven't responded to a data collection form throughout the years that they're rated within that category, we need to encourage our customers to go back to the rating categorisation statement and just confirm that they are actually within the right categorisation.
Thank you. Councillor Gates.
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Just a question, and I apologise if I've missed it, but is there any detail about the people who, within this report, about the people who had submitted claims for being potentially overcharged on their rating category?
Through the Chair, so that comes out through the objection process. So once we get an objection through, we then consider what rating category the customer should be in, and in most cases the customer is objecting because they've been put in a higher rating category and in effect paying a higher rate. So the objections that we've processed and the credit adjustments provided back to the customers would reflect that overcharge in the rate by being classified incorrectly.
Okay.
Do you, Mr Chair? So just to add to that, Councillor Gates, so the purpose of this report was purely on the process and to look at our first internal review, the internal review from the external consultant, independent consultant, and then what we can do moving forward. So not those raw details aren't in there for
No,
this
I
one.
didn't think so, and I just wondered what the position was.
So I'm happy to move the item, and if somebody would like to second, I'll speak to it. Councillor Pauline Young. So are there any other questions? So I think the challenge that we have is ultimately we've got 276,000 rateable properties on the Gold Coast, and on any given year we may have between 10 and 20,000 of those properties transfer into new ownership. And we have a rating category system where we've got 160 odd rating categories, and we rely on a data collection form which is sent to new property owners or property owners where we think that there's been a change of circumstances. We rely on that form to be completed and returned in order to set the rating category for those properties. And as we've heard today, there's some 70-odd% of those people who were unhappy with the rating category that they hadn't necessarily completed the data collection form. So whilst on one hand the bulletin may be able to lead off with a story that talks about city rate stuff up fix, the harsh reality is that we don't have ESP as an organisation, and we rely on an appropriate collection of data from property owners. And then each year in the rates notice that people receive, if they receive it by mail, they get a very large and long piece of white paper that puts all the categories down. If they receive it by email, they get the ability to click through to confirm their rating category. I don't think this council is really interested in collecting rates from people in the wrong category. We're actually interested in collecting rates from people in the right category. We have, whilst we have a lot of categories, we very broadly only have 6 or so classes of rate payers that are then broken into categories. I think the key recommendation from the external consultant has been that the city undertake a careful review of those categories, and it may very well be that part of the answer lies in the simplification of rating categories, but that's a task that we want to make sure that we do carefully and in a considered fashion, because whenever we change a rating category, if we were to compact 2 rating categories from 2 to 1, we want to make sure that we're really aware of who the winners and the losers are as that change happens. So I think the officers, and particularly Karen, since you've taken over the new role, I think that the pushing forward with the simplification of the collection forms, the plain English of those forms is really important. And I think that the city's continued reliance on the ability to collect data through emails and SMS and to be able to contact our ratepayers through those modern forms of communication are really important. So I think there's been some really good learnings in this space, and I think that the fact that we've got somewhere between 100 and 300 ratepayers who have maybe signalled through a process that they are in the wrong category and we're working through them is a sign that your processes are working. But I think that we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that we've got 276,000 ratepayers that are on the right category. And so I think that it's a complex bit of work that you do, but thank you. So I've closed. Would we like to now vote all in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Harvey. Darren, you had one that you're going to take to Councillor Castra's committee. Okay, so I get to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. I get to thank Alicia and her team for your great efforts in a year that has involved just a little bit of change. And I note that Paul Callender is also hiding away in the director's box. So we've clearly had a good period of structural change in the organisation, and I think that will continue on into the next calendar year, and we're in safe hands with Alicia and her team. Rightio, and with that you can all crack your bonbons and wear your silly hats. Closed.